Whenever we go to work in MySQL, we're going to be doing it within MySQL Workbench. This is just a user interface by where we write our code, send it to MySQL, then MySQL sends us results back. And this is what it looks like when you open it up. And these are connections that's already been made to website, a host. Here it happens to be a local host of my computer. And so we're going to click on this. And this is what Workbench looks like. Let me see if I can get rid of some of this. Okay. You can see over here, these are databases. And these are databases that came with MySQL. I didn't create these. And so you can see within these databases, this is a database, Sakila, and there are tables, and this has something to do with movies. So there are databases of actors and film categories, films, that kind of thing. And so remember, a database is just a collection of tables that all relate to each other somehow. Here they relate to each other because, say, there are actors in different movies, and you can cross-reference them. And we are going to go ahead and start writing some code here. So this is right here is a script. If this wasn't already open, we'd say want to go here and do a new SQL tab for executing queries. And then we always want to save our code. And I'm going to save it as a script S1 SQL code. And let's say I want to see what databases there. So I can say show databases. And notice the words, they started off in black and then they turned into blue. So show, but as soon as we got to W, it turned blue. That's because the Workbench is recognizing show as a MySQL command. And database is also a command, so it's blue. Database is. And then to run this one line, I can click this here. And it's going to show me all the databases that are in MySQL right now. Now what we want to do is we have, let's say I want to import this table is sales data underscore all.csv. And to show you what this looks like, I opened it in Notepad here. And there are over 1 million observations in here. That's why we can't open it in Microsoft Excel. We're using the database here because it's too big to use things like, let's say, spreadsheets or Power BI. And we have sales data. So we have SKU, stock keeping units. So this is a barcode for each product. So this product was 483-38944. We have the date it was sold, January 1st, 2019. The store in which it was sold in our Enid store. The other two stores in the data are Perkins and Stillwater. We have the quantity of that SKU, that item that was sold, and it's 404 units. We have the price at which it was sold that day, $4.09. And then we have an index, the index. This is just something, in any database, you want a unique number for every row. So you need a unique number for every row. So that's what this is. So if this table had 1 million rows, this number should go from 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to the last number being 1 million. Now I'm going back to my Workbench. And so what I'm trying to do is I want to bring this table into a new database in SQL. So first I need to create a new database. And to do that, I'm going to go create, so turn blue, because it's a command, database, okay. And I want to call this database comp underscore metrics for like company metrics, the metrics of how a company is doing. Now, let me real quick tell you everything I learned about SQL I learned just online. Just like, for instance, when I wanted to know SQL for making a new database, I would Google it, and it would tell me how to do it. So very few people go to class, but people like me, we didn't go to class to learn this stuff. We learned it on our own. So we created a database, comp metrics. It's not showing up over here. Well, I haven't run it yet, so I've got to, I'm going to go click here to run it. Looks like it did run. There's a check mark there, so it seemed to be successful. Now it's not showing up here, so I'm going to go refresh it right here. Yes, it does show up. And when I go to inspect it, you can see there's no tables yet. I'm also going to come up here and ask to run the show databases again. And now when I run that command, comp metrics does show up. Okay. So remember, what I wanted to do is create this new database, and then within the database create a new table in it, which I can then import these data. And so now I'm going to start commands about putting a table in database. And even though I've created comp metrics, I need to specifically tell MySQL that I'm using comp metrics for this. So I'm going to say use comp metrics for this, and I'm not going to run that yet. Then I'm going to say create table, and I want to call this table sales data. And then I'm going to put some commands in parentheses, and you'll notice that every time I write a command, I end on a semicolon. SQL doesn't care about like line breaks, so I could run this like this. So I've got 2 lines. I'm going to run it. It's going to keep running the commands until it hits a semicolon. And so here, if I'm running 2 lines, I come up here, execute the selected portion, run it, and it runs fine. Okay. Now I want to create table. What I want to do is give the table a format like this. So I'm telling SQL that the first row SKU and what the data looks like, that the second row is date and what the data looks like, and so on. So I'm going to say create table, sales data all. My first variable is SKU, and the format of that variable, it's a barcode and has 8 digits, and the barcodes I'm using always have 8 digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this isn't a number, it's an identification. So we want to store that as a character, not as a number, as a character with 8 digits. And we're also going to say not null. Not null means if any new data is injected into the table, it can't be blank for SKU. So anytime I have new data in this table, within this data set, it has to have an SKU number. And I'm going to say not null for all these fields here. In databases, what you would call columns in an Excel spreadsheet is called fields. So the next one is date. And I'm putting a comma here because I have another line to go. Date. Okay, now notice that date was the name of my field. It was the actual date, but it turned blue. And what that means is that MySQL is interpreting date as a command. One way around this is to tell it that it's a name and not a field. I can do this. Say date, the format of that is a date time, and it's not null there. And so you're starting to see that there's different specific types of data that you can use. There's characters, date time, and if you want to see different, let's say Google different data types in SQL. Let's see if we can find one that comes. Yeah. So these are all the different types. In a minute, we're going to be doing, see, integer, but there should be integer somewhere. Hold on. So these are string data types. You have numeric data types. Yeah, here's integer. We'll be using that in a minute. Double, there's decimal. Date type, so we were using date times. And of course, I learned all that just by doing. But so I could give the field the name date by putting it, I don't even know what you call these characters, by putting it within those characters, but I prefer not to do that. So instead, I'm going to give this the name date sold. Let's see what is next. Store. Yeah, so the next field is store, and those are words. And so the next field is store, and I'm going to say that is a character variable, and I'm going to limit it to 20 letters. So when you have huge databases, you need to be careful about how big any one entry can be. And so that's why sometimes you limit the size of an entry of a field. And again, I'm going to say not null. Next is the quantity of sales. And in these data, you can't sell half a unit. They have to go in integers. So I'm going to say quantity sales is an integer, not null. Next, we have price, and of course, price can have 2 decimal places. So I'm going to say price is a decimal, and that can be 20 digits to the left of the decimal place and 2 digits to the right, not null. And then remember, this last one is the index, the primary ID. Now you'll notice just because this column is called the index doesn't mean I have to name it the index in MySQL. And we usually give it the name primary. Now see, primary. And we're going to come back to this, see if I can name it like that. It's my first time doing this, but instead I'm going to name it primary ID so that I know it's that MySQL interprets it as a name. It's an integer, not null. I don't need a comma here because there's no more lines underneath this. Save my file, and so now I'm going to see if I did everything right. It hasn't given me error, so usually if something's obviously wrong, it'll tell you. See that X. So I'm going to see if I can run all of this and create this empty table with that shell that I want. And one way I can run multiple lines is to click this, or I've learned I can hold and shift and then hit enter. And let's see, there's a check there, so it looked like it worked. Everything looks good. And we'll come over here. I'm going to refresh. Now tables. Yeah, now we have these columns here. I can come over here and click this and inspect it. And if the table had data in it, you would see numbers here, but it doesn't. That is why it is blank. Get rid of that. And everything's working, so I'm going to save it. Now what I've created so far is I have sales data all table that it's blank, but it's formatted in the exact same way as the text file that I'm trying to bring in. Now the variables in the same order. Now I don't have to give them the exact same names. Remember, I renamed the index primary ID, but SKU date store, SKU date sold store, and so on. So now I'm ready to actually insert these data into this empty table. And to do that, it took me I don't know, an hour to study online, figure out how to do this. But the solution I found was to do these commands. So we're loading data local info. We're saying local info because data source is on a local hard drive. It's not connected to a server. And so this is the data I want, sales data all. First I need the path. To get the path, I'm just going to click in Explore here. I'm going to copy that, Control C, and I'm going to paste it in between the brackets there. And then the name is sales data underscore all.csv. CSV. Okay, so we have that, and the command continues, but I'm going to continue it on a different line. It's the same command though, because I didn't hit a semicolon there. We want to insert that data into the table sales data. And we also need to tell MySQL that it's a CSV file, and notice that values between each field in any one row, they're separated by a column. Now to tell MySQL that, and I do it by saying that fields are terminated by a comma, and also the text file has the field names in the first row, but I don't want to import that. So I'm going to say ignore one rows. Now finding these actual code didn't take very long, but some other things I had to do to make it work. So let's see if we can run that. So I'm selecting all the data, and then I'm going to all the selected rows by holding down Control and Shift and then hitting Enter. But now, okay, it didn't work. And what I did, I spent some time online sleuthing around, and I found that all you need to do is change the backslash to forward slashes. I have no idea why. Need to do, so we'll do that. Now we'll try to, and I'm going to save my script file every time I think about it. I'm going to try to run it again, highlighting everything I want to run, hold down Control, hold down Shift, hit Enter. The shortcut keys may be different on a Mac. Okay, still didn't work. Actually, what's going on is saying no database selected. I had closed and shut the closed the computer, shut it up. I closed the computer, then open it up again, and so I need to retell it which database I'm using. So we're going to use metrics. Again, I can put all this on one line if we want. See if it works. Okay, it is. It's running now, and we'll stay with it just so you get an idea of how long it takes to run. And it is still running. And this has, I think it has almost 3 million observations, 3 million rows. So it's got a lot of data to put in that table. Just so you know, one time, sometimes it can run so long that it can do a thing called timeout, and I was able to fix that by going to Preferences, Edit Preferences, SQL Editor, and I changed, it was 30 seconds, and I changed it to 90 seconds. So that's why I said 90 now. And notice it took it 61 seconds, so if that timeout had only been at 30, it would have timed out before it could have executed a query, and it wouldn't have worked. Looks like it did work. So it was telling me there's 2,739,000 rows affected. And I can kind of verify that it worked first by coming over here and clicking this. And things look good there. Like I can compare this to the actual data here. 43, 38944, 43, 38944. Another thing I can do, I happen to know this data, and I know that there are almost a million observations for each store. And so I'll run this code, and you're not prepared to understand this code yet, but I'll go ahead and show it to you. I want to select the distinct values of the variable store. What member could either Perkins, Enid, or Stillwater. And there's this thing count, where it counts the number of rows. I want to select distinct from sales data, and I want to group by store. And notice, suppose I try to run this. It's not going to run. And notice it's giving me the X there. It's telling me something's wrong. I haven't put my semicolon at the end. And we still got an error. Oh, I need, so yep, the X went away. Looks good. I'm going to run this one line by holding Control and hitting Enter. And notice it is running. And we'll stay with it so you can get an idea of how, okay. Yeah, so Enid, Perkins, and Stillwater, same number of observations, almost a million observations for each store. So everything here looks good. Now, let's suppose I want to, I'm just getting rid of some of these windows, the ones that I can. Sometimes it just won't let you close windows. I'm not sure why. Now, suppose I want to close everything and just come back to this data set later and work with it. I've already loaded my data and I've made this connection. And so it is, it's stored on I'm going to my little house here. It is stored in this MySQL 80. And so really I can get rid of all of this code. But one thing I like to do, just in case I've got code that works, and suppose I want to come back to it later, I keep a file, and this one's called script all. You can see I've got a lot of stuff here. What I like to do is when I know I'm about to get rid of this code, I don't need it anymore, I'm still going to select it all by holding down Control and hitting A. And then maybe I'll cut it, Control X. And then I'll go to script all, go all the way to the bottom, and paste it in there by hitting Control V. I'm going to save it, and now I'll get rid of script all. I'll come back here, and now there's nothing here. Well, I'm going to shut it down real quick and then bring it back up, and then we'll start using it again. So I'm going to exit out of my SQL workbench and then open it right back up. Here I'm going to go to my connection, and notice my sales data all table is still there. Still got all its columns, still has all the data. All right, and so now, let's suppose I now want to come here and work with it. I've got my script, that's one, and now I can start coding. Now all I have to do is tell my SQL that I want to use that database. And so I'm going to go use database comp metrics. I don't need to say database, just use comp metrics. Okay, I'm going to run that one line by just hitting Control Enter. We're using it. And now we can come down here and we can start using putting in SQL code to run queries. And when we say run queries, we're asking it to go into that huge data set and get us a subset of data. Now suppose I just want to see all the data. Then I'll just say, and here we're doing our SQL code language here, select. Most of the times when we're running something SQL, we're going to say select. Star just means all, select all from, we need to tell it what table, sales data, all. And with a semicolon. And now I'm going to run that one line. And it came, and it is outputting all that data, but it's not going to give us, I mean, I guess it is kind of giving us everything, but it's giving us 3 million observations. And usually what we're wanting to do is want to go into that data and find things like the highest selling item, average sales by store, that kind of thing. Okay, now let me go ahead and run some SQL queries to show you the kind of things that you'll be learning. So if we want the entire data set, we're going to say select all, the star means all, from, first I'm going to make sure it knows what database to use, so I'm going to run use comp metrics. Select all from sales data. And when I say run this, I'm not going up and hitting these buttons anymore. When I'm running one line now, I'm just holding down control and hitting enter. And I'm going to get data. Now suppose I only wanted certain fields of the data, not every field. Maybe I only want SKU and date sold. Then I'll just do that. Only get those two fields. Most of the time we're not wanting all the observations. So let's say, suppose we're only interested in one particular SKU. So let's go select all the fields from sales data where the SKU equals, and let's choose 3176456264562 64562. And I only get that one SKU, still a lot. And suppose I wanted just that SKU in our Enid store. Then I just modify by where SKU equals that and store equals Enid. Now I only get that one SKU in our Enid store. And suppose we want to go further, we want it for one particular date. Suppose we want all the records of this SKU in our Enid store, and let's choose a date. And date, so let's choose St. Kateri's feast day of, let's say, of 2022. Notice we got to use this format here. That's the format MySQL uses. And her feast day is July 14th. Let's run that. Should only be one record. But yep, so on St. Kateri's feast day, that SKU, that store, there it is. Suppose we want to know how many records there are in a database. We can go select, there's a count function. That's how many rows. And suppose we want to know how many observations there are for each store. Go select distinct. Count. Again, this is going kind of in advance of where you are, but I just want you to see the kind of stuff we'll be doing. Select store. I want to count the number of observations from sales data store. Let's see what happens there. Yeah, so from each store we have 913,000 observations.